So I'm opening the meeting. We just welcome all the members present, as well as the Premier and his team. I'm looking forward to a good engagement. As per the rules of committee meetings, keep in mind that this meeting is being live streamed, and we do have a quorum. If I look at the number of members present, I do have a message from member Sayed just saying he's running a few minutes late. If I can just check with the procedural officer, do we have any other apologies recorded? Okay, I'm struggling just to see. That's my poor eyesight. The other members are online. So just for the purposes of the record, if I can ask the committee members just to introduce themselves. I'm Thomas Walters, chairperson of the committee.
Good afternoon. I'm Benedicta van Minnen, a permanent member of the committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, colleagues and the professional staff. I'm Member Boyson, a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peter Johnson, permanent member of the committee.
I can ask the members online just to also introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Chair. Brett Heron, member of the committee.
See Member Stevens there. Member Stevens. Right, and then I am going to ask the Premier and your team if you can just introduce yourselves also for the record.
Thank you very much, Chair and honourable members. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Alan Windy, and I'll just go down the road. DG.
Chair, good afternoon. My name is Adam Madela. I'm the Director General in the province and also the Accounting Officer for the Department of Premier.
Good afternoon, Zenit Ishmael, and I am from the Department of the Premier.
Good afternoon. My name is Dejan Halim, Director of Economic Development Integration at Economic Development and Tourism.
Hi, my name is Alison Goldstack. I'm from the Department of the Premier and working in policy and strategy.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Sarah Sali, and I work in the Department of the Premier, Policy and Strategy, Policy Lead for Safety. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Tristan Gergens, also in the Department of the Premier in the Policy Unit, lead on the Educated, Healthy and Caring Society.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. My name is Robert Shaw. I'm in the Office of the Director General.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Nozipho Maolwana from the Office of the Director General.
Thank you very much. And I think we can get straight into it. So over to you, Premier, and your team.
Thank you very much, Chair and Committee. You've asked us to come and talk about the Provincial Strategic Plan. Of course, a plan like this is a process that brings us to a plan. I must say that this process started even before the end of the last term through the policy unit. At that stage, it was still Dr. Hildegard Fast before she retired. Started the process knowing that, of course, there's a new term coming in, not necessarily what's the outcome of an election, but at least the framework started in developing the strategic plan. It also went through a whole process, but you'll see that in the presentation, from consultation, taking it through local governments, because of course our strategic plan also must align to the national medium-term development plan, as they call it now. It would have gone, as a number of the members were invited. It went to the PCF in Beaufort West. It went through various iterations in the process of consultation. Then, of course, it then gets expression in the State of the Province address, which I then gave in the beginning of this year. So post the election, the processes of consultation, the first expression really in that state of the province. It then gets publicly tabled. That informs then the budgetary process, the annual performance plans of the departments, etc., etc. Of course, in the State of the Province address, where you give it the framework, which talks about building a government that we can trust, which talks about our apex priority of growing the economy, creating jobs, and enabling our residents to get those jobs. It talks about the actual plans within that framework of growth for jobs, or the focus on safety, education, and a healthy and caring society, the framework that underpins it, from good governance to innovation, and then perhaps also just highlighting the focus areas in our province over and above that, which I spoke about in the SOPO, would have been the focus on energy and the Energy Council, which had been set up in the previous term, and then also adding water to that council into this term. So now it's an Energy and Water Council, so sort of lifting out certain areas that we need to make sure that we're zooming in on, because they are raised as a high level within the risk register, in the system of risks as a government, or whether it be our national risks and how that aligns to the national plan. And of course, that would then be dealt with at local level, but also as we go in and have our meetings at a national level with the national cabinet, and that's the NTDP alignment. But I think with that, probably the best thing is to actually hand over to the DG, and we'll see from his plan, making sure that we'll have a whole range of presenters. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much, and also good afternoon to all the members. I mean, we've got the team here that's actually put this plan together. So I've asked the team to actually present their own work today. And in fact, almost all of them, Chair, this will be their maiden presentation to Parliament. And we've also indicated that we'll also allow them to respond to some of the questions. So, Chair, I mean, my first slide, if Oshima, I just want to check, are you sort of shifting the stuff? Oh, there. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so Chair, I think Premier spoke about this. I mean, we always start our presentations with this. I mean, this is the strat plan that we've tabled in Parliament when Premier tabled the State of the Province address on the 26th of February 2025. And when we tabled this plan, we said that we need to set out a vision for this government for the next 5 years. Obviously, building on the work that we've done in the previous term between 2019 and 2024. Obviously, in the middle of that, we were hit by COVID. But this actually allowed us to actually go back to the drawing board and to put a plan together, that would really change the landscape in the province. So we've set ourselves a vision. Major aim of building a government that people trust. And I mean, many times you read these articles in all these magazines and books, when trust flies out the window, you go into a very difficult path as a government. So we said our ultimate goal is to build a government that people trust. We've publicly gone and we've actually made a promise to the residents of this province. And we basically say that we're a government of integrity. We believe in excellence and opportunity. We take time to listen, and we respond with honesty. We create hope and instill dignity because we build a safer communities, and we also believe in economic growth and job. And we do this so that people can live life that they value. But we also believe that you can't just have a promise statement without having values in place. So this government have put in place 6 values, and these values have been actually workshopped with the staff. So we didn't just sit in a corner and actually thought it out. It actually came from the staff. And it's the value of integrity. It's the value of innovation, responsiveness, caring, competence, and accountability. And everything we do is premised on a set of values. But ultimately, whatever we do, every action that we take as this government is towards building a government that people trust. The next slide just deals with the process. Premier already spoke about this. And in fact, Chair, as Premier has indicated, we've already started this process even before the national and provincial elections that happened in May 2024. And we started with a framework Obviously, when the new government was established, we've actually taken, the document to cabinet. There's been some strategic planning sessions. We've engaged with municipalities, at various platforms. We've also had some workshops with municipalities, focus group discussions, and then we work towards an integrated development plan. Obviously, all of this also fit into our medium-term budget policy statement, which was tabled in actually November last year. It also fed into the adjustments budget. There's been budget alignment through our MTech process that we're doing every year. And then it also fed into the process that we're having with municipalities. We call it the Simon Time. And then ultimately, the last iteration, happened at the cabinet Bosberaad. We then finalized all the stuff, all the planning during January, and then Premier tabled this document in February 2025. So what this process talks about is an integrated collaborative process, not just by the Department of the Premier, but particularly with all the departments, including the Department of Local Government and the Treasury, as well as municipalities, and also with the national government. I mean, we fed this information into the National Cabinet Lekgotla processes that Premier and I attend, and then also it contributed to ultimately the medium-term development plan that was tabled by the President, when he delivered his State of the Nation address. So this slide just deals with overarching what the strategic plan is providing. So it obviously guides all 13 departments. And in fact, you will see in the later slides that what's important for us is to make sure that there's alignment with national and local government plans. And what our plan does, it basically sits on 4 pillars. The one deals with growth for jobs, safety, educated and healthy and caring society, and then obviously the arm that also pulls all of us together is sits under innovation, culture, and governance. But again, these priorities all work together to achieve our apex priority. And Premier spoke about that. It's to help businesses grow and create jobs and equipping, the residents of this province to actually get those jobs. And you can see everything we do deals with following an integrated approach. And what we want to do is obviously we've got certain key impact areas. So we want to impact households. We want to impact communities. We want to impact youth through agency, because that is also what some of the data is telling us. And ultimately, it is about providing, opportunities for the economy to grow and for government to actually set the tone, because ultimately we're not creating jobs, and we're quite clear on it. But what we do is we create the enabling environment for jobs to be created in the system. So whether you work in economic development, whether you work in the Department of Education or the Department of Health, everything you do is ultimately aimed at growing the economy, creating jobs, helping businesses grow, create those jobs, and equipping people to actually take up those job opportunities. So if somebody goes to school, or somebody goes to a TVET, or somebody goes to hospital, our aim is ultimately you go there because you need to be healed, and ultimately you need to get back into the job market. So you can see everything that we do is aligned to our ultimate goal of building a government that people trust, and our apex priority of growing the economy and creating jobs, and ultimately focusing on the resident. So, Chair, if you look at this slide just demonstrates that whatever we do is resident centric. It's got an integrated approach, and we always say that government interface with people basically from cradle to grave. But what's important for us is that middle part. So when you are born, what is it that we do in your first 6 months? That first 1,000 days interventions by health and by the Department of Social Development. When you go to school, what is it that we're providing to you? When you go through the process of, growing up, and particularly your youth years, what is it that government is doing? And then obviously when you grow old, what is it that we're doing, particularly in that space? So what this government wants to do is we want to impact each resident at each stage of their life. And ultimately, when you come to the end of your life should be a life that you've lived with dignity, and obviously, with the work that we as government are doing. The next slide just deals with our integrated structure for implementation. So it's easy to have a plan, but ultimately, how do we actually implement the plan? So you can see, Chair, the way that this plan is put up. The plan is divided into different portfolio key areas, and those key areas then drills down into certain focus areas, and then there are priority interventions. And the team will talk today about some of those priority interventions across the 4 different areas. But you can't just have a plan like this, because this is a provincial plan. This entire plan needs to feed into the different APPs. So if you go to the APP of any of the departments, you will find a linkage into the broader strategic plan, and those things actually land in the different APPs. And it can't just land in an APP. Everything is underpinned by the budget, and the budget is underpinned by budget program structures, and all of these things actually feeds back into the ultimate goals that we actually want to achieve as this government. So what is key today, Chair, is are those priority interventions, what it is that we do, and how do we make sure as a government that we actually deliver, on all of this. And the question may come, so you have a lovely plan, you've got all these APPs, you've got all these lovely budgets, but how do you monitor it, as a provincial government? And we've developed a tool that we call the performance tracker. It's a joint product between the Department of the Premier and the Provincial Treasury. And what we're saying to all the departments out there is there is a role for the centre of government to play. So I think many of you who served on many of these different committees, in particular also in the Budget Committee, are used to our quarterly reporting that comes to actually to Parliament. And what we want to do this time around is actually to bring the financial and the non-financial performance into one area. So when you engage with us and when you engage, in the different committees, you'd be able to see what is it that we do, how is it reflected in APPs, how does it link to the PSP, how is it linked to each strategic plan of a department, and how are we doing with implementing, our PSP. And what I think the committee needs to note is obviously our PSP is a document that we've set an ultimate goal for 5 years. And every year we will put steps in place through our APP processes in each of the different departments to make sure that we're working step by step to ultimately achieve our ultimate goals. So, Chair, the next set of slides, we will now zoom into those different PSP portfolio areas. And obviously I've indicated that the different areas is obviously the area around growth for jobs. And then that will be done by Diane. And then the next area will be around safety. And we will then also talk about educated, healthy and caring society. And then innovation, culture and governance, will also be covered by the team here. So I'm going to ask Diane to go straight into the presentation. It is about 3 or 4 slides per portfolio area, but you can now see how all of these things come together. So if you look at this thing through your lens and you actually take a helicopter view of it, you will actually see that everything sits on these 4 key priority areas. But it's not just there. It feeds into budgets. It feeds into APPs, it feeds into the SPs, and it actually feeds into the entire accountability cycle. So at the end, we will come back to just explain to you also how do we close this accountability loop, and we are open to having regular feedback to this committee, because we believe oversight by Parliament is key, but also oversight by the executive. That's actually where it starts, and we're enabling the executive, we're enabling HODs to have proper oversight over the promises that we've made to communities out there. So I'm going to ask Diane to run through it, and then each of the members will then cover the area, Chair, and then we'll come to the end, and then we'll be open up the issue for questions. Diane?
Thank you, DG. So to the members, just to have a look at the slide. The slide provides you an overview of the growth for jobs portfolio. You'll see a similar slide coming up for each of the different portfolios that my colleagues will present. Essentially what you're seeing in the top left corner is the impact statement for growth for jobs, the focus areas for growth for jobs, and how they relate back to the live course that the DG has just taken us through. So within the growth for jobs portfolio, the first priority set out in the PSP is around employability and economic opportunities. And you can see how we're thinking about this being related back to households and human development in terms of building self-sufficiency of households, but also supporting our youth to prepare them for participation in the economy through employability and those kinds of opportunities that we provide. In the economic and growth opportunity space, the focus is on infrastructure and connectivity, energy, water, tech and innovation, exports and expanding our markets, and investments and creating opportunities for businesses in the Western Cape. So these slides walk through the specific focus areas, the outcome that we'd like to achieve over the long term, as well as the specific 5-year outcomes that we're trying to achieve through this current term. So in the economic opportunities space, the 5-year outcomes that we're working towards are around supporting workplace skills, productivity, supporting small businesses, preparing businesses for the transition towards a low carbon economy. So understanding what the impacts are of climate change and what that means for businesses, and then preparing people for that transition. In the investment space, our focus is on building the Western Cape as the regional investment destination of choice in Africa, improving the investment climate in targeted growth opportunities, so finding those opportunities and supporting investment within them, strengthening and expanding our ecosystems, our investment ecosystems, to improve trust and collaboration across Western Cape business, and tracking investments to assist with decision-making and trend analysis. In the export space, our focus is on logistics, ensuring that logistics are effective, we're building efficiencies, and building competitiveness among our exports as well as our exporters. So building that comparative advantage against other regions, supporting markets and export ecosystems, and establishing the Western Cape position as within particular priority sectors. So finding those key priority sectors within the Western Cape economy and supporting those priority sectors to encourage the comparative advantage. In the water security and resilience space, our focus is on reducing demand for water, but also increasing supply and shifting behaviors around water to help us achieve this. Energy resilience and net zero carbon focuses on disaster mitigation and management, as well as how we can increase the supply of energy within the Western Cape. What do we do about reskilling people in the transition towards a net zero carbon economy? And how do we prepare businesses in the face of mechanisms such as the carbon border adjustment mechanisms happening overseas? And so, yeah, there's a number of interventions within these 5-year outcomes. These have been shared, and I won't go through each one of them individually, but there are different elements here. So the elements is around energy, it's about net zero carbon, and also preparing the markets for these adjustments that happen over time. Tech and innovation is about improving the competitiveness and productivity within the economy of the Western Cape, establishing the Western Cape as the tech capital of Africa, strengthening public service innovation. So there's a strong linkage here between the Growth for Jobs portfolio and the ICG portfolio, which my colleague Alison will present later. But it's about how do we improve our own innovation to have an impact externally as well. Building up R&D and innovation within the Western Cape firms, and supporting tech and digital technology by businesses and residents across the Western Cape. Infrastructure and the connected economy is about physical infrastructure, but also how we support the rollout of broadband across the province and improve logistics and mobility throughout the Western Cape. Yes, thank you. I'll hand over to my colleague Sarah to take us through safety.
Hi, everybody. In terms of the safety portfolio, I want to start out with the impact statement, which is the Western Cape is a resilient and safe society. Maybe I just want to start out by unpacking what did we mean by resilience when we put together the impact statement. How we see this is that it's a holistic systems approach to safety in the province, focusing on individuals, communities, as well as government's functionality and its abilities to cope and respond to disruptions, unexpected demands, risks, and complexities. And the idea here also is that we as government recognize that that the richest knowledge actually lies within our communities, and we actually need to co-create solutions to problems in safety together. So saying that, we have 3 key focus areas of the PSP in the safety portfolio. The first one I want to talk about is integrated violence prevention. This specifically looks at key social drivers of crime, using evidence-informed data to assist us to implement the necessary and relevant interventions. Secondly, the second focus area is safe and secure communities and infrastructure. Here, we're also looking at localized area-based interventions that incorporate community-led solutions and also touch on creating safe public spaces as well as protecting our infrastructure. And then finally, our third focus area for safety is effective and responsive law enforcement. And here the focus is on targeted hotspot policing, targeted interventions. In a nutshell, basically these 3 focus areas combined are looking at place-based evidence-informed an evidence-informed approach to bring stakeholders together in a whole of society approach to deal with both violence prevention as well as violence reduction in the Western Cape. So the next slide goes into details around what exactly we are focusing on over a 5-year period. In the violence prevention space, The focus area outcome looks at families and communities specifically, cultivating positive youth behaviors, mitigating alcohol and substance-related harms, and creating an environment where violence is prevented. We are focusing on outcomes such as families exhibiting increased capacity to foster nurturing, supportive relationships, reducing the prevalence of interpersonal violence within households, specifically GBV as well. We're focusing on targeted substance abuse interventions, the decrease of alcohol and substance-related harms, and positive youth norms, behaviors, and activities that contribute to safety. In the safe and secure communities and infrastructure focus area, we're specifically focusing on both the rural and urban areas. We're looking at specifically place-based or area-based approaches and coordinated surveillance and evidence-enhanced whole-of-society responsiveness to community safety issues. We're looking at building strong community cohesion and social capital to reduce crime rates. And also, we're focusing on safe and secure economic and public infrastructure to increase economic activity, leading back to our apex priority to help support businesses to grow and to create jobs. And then the final focus area specifically focuses on outcomes around law enforcement agencies, inclusive of municipal law enforcement, to improve the capacity to prevent, detect, and respond to crime. We are looking at law enforcement that responds to the needs of local communities, including farming communities. We are looking at effective law enforcement and the criminal justice system to build public trust, as well as proactive and collaborative road safety programs to reduce road traffic and fatalities on our roads. And then finally, and most importantly, to focus on priority programs that mitigate major drivers of crimes, which include extortion, gangsterism, carjacking, and firearms. I think I want to stop here and maybe just reflect to say that in putting together these outcomes, we leaned very heavily on, obviously, as I said, getting the rich knowledge from our communities, and we did extensive focus groups in putting the PSP together. So a lot of these ideas actually come from our communities themselves, who understand their context, obviously, exceptionally well, and we have listened to them in terms of putting together our suite of interventions that we are targeting to assist. But lastly, to say that with all of these 5-year outcomes in safety, we are currently working on a set of outcome indicators because we recognize that evidence-informed approach to safety interventions is critical. But also, evidence doesn't also only necessarily speak to data over a long-term period, which we are also tracking. We are going to be leaning quite heavily on the localized knowledge and ideas that come up through our through our area-based approach to safety, our area-based teams that have been set up across the province to provide us with feedback in terms of responding to their needs. Thanks.
My opportunity just to take you through the Educated, Healthy and Caring Society portfolio. So this portfolio explicitly takes a life course approach. So you'll see across the focus areas, a focus on children, a focus on youth, and then a focus on adults and older people. And then it also draws the link to the environment in which people live. So a particular focus on spatial transformation and social infrastructure, and then also a clear view on the way in which the environment creates particular trends in society. So I'm drawing in the One Health approach and then linking that explicitly to disaster management. So in terms of the focus area outcomes, you can see the focus with young children is on describing the aspects that will give them the most optimal start to life. So starting from both the mother and their healthcare, a focus on making sure they have access to nutrition that they need early on in life. And then ultimately they are given responsive caregiving and opportunities for learning. Then for young people, So a focus on making sure the young people have the opportunity to have well-rounded lives, opportunity to be educated and ultimately be prepared to enter the economy with the right foot forward. For adults and older people, the focus is really on making sure that they have the opportunity to build lives that they find meaningful, that they have access to the healthcare they need, and that ultimately they can be actively engaged in their communities in ways that make communities stronger and more productive. And then, as I've already said, there's the spatial focus to this, which describes the kinds of environments adults and children need to live full and productive lives. And then recognizing that that happens within a wider set of systems that determine the health and then the productivity of people, particularly in the contexts of shocks, which will be aggravated by climate change. And so the One Health approach being key to making sure that people's quality of life is protected across the different aspects of the life course.
Hi, I'm going to move on to innovation, culture and governance. And this portfolio is slightly different from the other portfolios because it's about building the Western Cape government capabilities to empower the other portfolios. So this portfolio is more about internal capabilities, but we have to build our internal capabilities to support the other portfolios. So you see it as a slightly different focus. Another thing about ICG, you can see we've got 5 enablers, which we have on the board there. And another thing is that we are looking at all of these 5 things working together. So we say in ICG that in order to really build capabilities, we have to do all of these 5 things at the same time. So it's looking at the Western Cape government as like a system of functions, not separated in silos. So now I'm going to take you through each of the innovation, each of our enablers. And the first one is innovation. And how I would summarize that to you, it's about doing new things. So how we can reimagine services. But at the same time, it's about doing existing things differently. So you want to do both these 2 things at the same time. And a focus of this innovation is it's about working with people outside of the government system. It's working with all stakeholders and all people. So it's universities and it's business and it's think tank. So this is very broad. And also when we think about innovation, we are looking at the culture of creativity, experimentation and teamwork. So it's about building that as well. So it's got an external and internal side to it. The next one is integration and collaboration. That's slightly different. That is government focused. We all know in government, there's a lot of processes and there's a lot of systems. This enabler is about bringing it all together. How do we connect the dots in all these systems and processes to kind of really get extra value? So here we're looking at the entire value chain, I should say, of government work, from the policy to the planning to the budgeting of delivery. How can we do that better across government and with all the functions of government? And another new thing here is spatial. We're also trying to understand spatially how our planning and processes work, and that is very important. The next enabler we have is cultural and people-centric delivery. Again, this enabler has 2 sides. It has the Western Cape government and the official side, but it also has the resident side. And this brings together the concept that we have to have capacitated officials in order to have good services. Both of these things can't be seen differently. They have to be seen as the same thing. So what we're looking at here is for officials to actually have access to assets like digital and infrastructure, but also cultural, to change how the cultural journey and values. That's also important. And what we're also looking at here is to look at digital services for residents, but we're very conscious of the digital divide. And that's what this is about. And the last thing it's about is communication. It's important how we communicate with our stakeholders. The next one is futures thinking and evidence-informed decision-making. This one has two sides to it. The future side of it is about anticipation. If we think just what has happened to us in this year alone, it seems like the world has become so fast-paced and there's so much coming at us. So this is about trying to sit today and think about the different futures that could play out. And the reason why we want to do this is so our policies and our programs are kind of more agile to what is happening out there. And another thing we're looking at, which my colleagues have spoken about a lot, is evidence-based policy and evidence-based action. This enabler also looks at that. And a big thing here is it's about creating a data ecosystem. It's about analytical capabilities and intelligence. The last one we're going to look at is enablers. It's ease of doing business. And the concept behind this is to make government quicker, easier, and faster. However, we still have to be conscious of compliance. It's very important that we have sustained good governance results. And another part of this enabler is also about what we call transformed governance, that governance must be future orientated, going back to the other futures orientated, and it also must be innovative as well. These two things can exist at once. So I've gone through these enablers now, and you can see how they all are kind of interlinked. This is the last slide, and what this is kind of bringing it together in the headline things we want to do. So a big thing coming out is digital transformation. We want to use digital means to make services more accessible, responsive, and effective, and also about the communication. Digital can help us communicate. The next thing we want to look at is productivity. We want to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of public services. But even though we are looking at digital, we are going to be very conscious of digital divide concerns. And another thing under productivity is about reducing the burden on officials and also streamlining services to make it easier for people to interact with us. The next thing is the workforce competencies. People are the core asset of the government. So what we're looking at here with workforce competencies is not only hard skills, but also culture, integrity, professionalism, ethical leadership. So as we look at innovation and all of the new things, those competencies become very important. And the other thing is being future fit. That's about agility and resilience. And in the world today, it's about crowding in additional resources, thinking about that, which goes back to innovation. It's about having foresight in policy, strategy, and program development, thinking, how these things can be affected in the future and building resilience into them. And also drawing data from multiple systems across government spheres, conducting analytics and producing intelligence that integrates planning, delivery, impact, and budgeting. And the last thing, which is very important for us, is trust. If we do all of these things, we have to ensure that public services are transparent, accountable, and governed by sound oversight mechanisms, while still making our services, able to be agile. And the last thing, we have spoken a lot about digital and that type of thing, but the most important thing is we must make sure they're designed, operate, and manage it on ethical and responsible principles. Okay, and here I'm actually closing off the last slide. It's called Closing the Accountability Loop. As you see, every portfolio has spoken about evidence and needing to be evidence-based and tracking what we are doing. So I'm closing off with this slide because this is what all of the portfolios are going to feed into, is the evidence of how they're doing and their indicators.
So that's it from our side. Hopefully, we've given you the gist of the document. Chair, maybe just on how we're going to plan to close the accountability loop. I've touched on it previously. Obviously, what we want to do is we want to get more public involvement as part of our agenda around transparency and also our agenda around being responsive. So what we're planning to do is, I mean, at the moment, as I said previously, you are exposed to when we come to you to deal with our quarterly performance, financial and non-financial. We're also putting our governance performance on the table at the moment in terms of what we're doing with regards to governance stuff. So what we ultimately want to do is to pull all of it into a single tool. We want obviously members of PTM to have access to that and also members of cabinet, but the entire system. And ultimately we want, even this committee and the public to be able to see what it is that we're doing as a government. We already have similar tools available, particularly in the energy space. Premier spoke about it quite a lot when we've been here to Parliament during the previous round. So we want to build a system so that people can actually keep us accountable. So if we make a promise that we're going to do X, that people can actually see, how we spend their money, how we're doing on our APP performance. So they don't need to wait until 6 months after the close of a year to get the annual report of a department and see what objectives have been achieved or not. They can actually see it on a quarterly basis. And we actually want to make it available, through cell phone applications that you can dial as a committee. So when you engage with us, you would actually have the information already, and then we can really just talk about how do we implement it. What we further want to do is obviously also make this available to the budget committee. We want to make it available to each member of parliament, so even when the individual parliamentary committees sit, you can actually use this as a basis to interrogate performance and actually ask much deeper questions to the respective departments. And they don't have to come here and actually present to you all the performance. It is actually electronically and it is publicly available information. So that's our plan. But we're building, this sort of building block, or it's almost like a Lego that we're putting together. And as I said, we're working together between ourselves and PT from the center to make sure, that we do this. And it goes back to our values of being responsive, of being accountable, and actually, indicate to people out there what is actually happening to, public spending. And it just drives our accountability in a different way.
Thanks, DG. So Chair and members of the committee, perhaps on this last slide as well, this is built by this team and the Treasury team. And like our other dashboards, going to be on our website so that anybody could have a look at it, as DG said. So I think, this was only brought to the Bosphorat of government a month ago. And it's quite amazing as to the ability and the agility of the team in building this. And then remember that obviously this strategic plan is to be read in conjunction with the National Development Plan. And then, as DG said, then this is the overall strategic plan for the 5 years. And then each department within this will have their strategic plan, their annual APPs, and then, of course, annual reports based on those which come now to us now in the next month. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to make a tongue-in-cheek observation. Traditionally, government departments give politicians either too much or too little, and completely without context. So what you have here is not only a context being described, the strategy, what we are working towards, but also towards the end there. And you can respond maybe at the end there. Actually, a tool that gives you a snapshot of exactly in real time, exactly where government is in terms of its own undertakings, which potentially, we obviously will see that if the proof is in the pudding, but potentially that is quite, I don't want to use the term in a politically loaded way, but it's a transformative, potentially hugely transformative moment. So I think it's something I certainly from my side, I will be fascinated in seeing how that unfolds. Colleagues, any questions or comments from the committee members? If I can have hands. Member Sayed, any other hands? Member van Minnen? Member Boyson? And it looks like there's a hand. Just confirm my eyesight isn't that great. There's both members online. Okay. Just finalize my list here. Right, and then also just for the purposes of the record, my member said, I did indicate you were going to run a few minutes late. He's joined us. You also will be the first speaker. And then member Stevens earlier was present, but she had a problem with the unmute function. So it looks like that's been resolved. But just for the record of the meeting as well. Member Sayed.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, and my greetings to the Premier and his team, and also to the members of the public who are present and online as well, and the media fraternity as well. Just let me firstly welcome the presentation. Look, I must say that again we are disappointed that the presentation only came yesterday, but one had time to at least in the build-up, I think it's on the website, to actually read the strategic plan, so we could then engage. But I think if we could just again, I mean, if I could appeal that be improved upon. Just at the onset, a bit of a high-level question at the beginning. Could we assume then that in terms of the PFMA and the Treasury regulations, that the strategic plan is a consolidation of the 5-year electoral term strategic plans which each department is required to develop? So I did get a sense that we will be having that from others. I just wanted to get that sense. Then also, my concern is, and I'm not sure whether perhaps we'll be getting other opportunities later down the line. But the plan, at a very generic sense, it seems very positive, but there doesn't seem to be too much of detail in terms of how are things going to be implemented, particularly with regards to the lived realities facing our people. I also get a sense that, yes, there's a lot of focus around economic growth. People must, for example, be healthy so that they can get to work. Not they must be healthy for the sake of being healthy, as human beings must be healthy, and the healthcare. So it seems as if it's very specific orientated. Is that informed by any particular strategic outlook? Or, I mean, what does that, because I mean, my sense would have been that it should be, we should look at the overall. So I just wanted to get that sense. Then, just in terms of the, I mean, and my concern is it may not be, look, it's not the competency. Local government operates as local government. But this department is, we look up, I think residents look up to a department headed by the Premier as being the department that's going to provide the strategic vision for the manner in which the state operates in the Western Cape. Now, there is a sense, there is a feeling amongst residents that service delivery has been very slow, particularly in the city of Cape Town as well. I know Member Heron, who's a member of the committee, spoke about, I mean, there's a video out of his where he's speaking about the slow pace of housing delivery, for example. Given all of these challenges, I mean, do we have an approach, a very practical approach, through which this particular plan is going to speak to those challenges, especially challenges at a local government level, because that's the interface between people and the delivery on the part of government. That's it for now. I've got some specific matters, Chair, on the various aspects of the plan, education, safety, and those things, but I think let me put that in the next round so that we just get generic now. Thank you.
And Mr. Yed, maybe also it's an opportunity to deal with the concern that you've raised. You also sent an email in that regard. What I agreed with the procedural officer, in future when we request inputs, we'll not only request inputs to a meeting, but also request the documentation must be sent to us beforehand with a particular deadline before a meeting. And then in the same vein, I don't think I need to stress to the Premier and his department, we obviously want to interrogate the documents. So yeah, so it's something that we want to improve going forward. Member van Minnen.
Thank you very much. Now I understand what the Premier is saying about reading these documents in conjunction with other documentation, and this is very much just a segment of that. So it's a very transversal concept, and I understand that. But my one question, and I'm looking at safety in particular, is the drawing of the data and talking to focus groups, getting information from communities. So I understand the methodology, but in order to actually enable the plan and to make it effective, I mean, there are very much limited tools within the provincial space that one can use. So I'm just wanting to know how one intends making this plan actually live to achieve the aims that are put down here. Thank you. And I would imagine that applies across the board. Thank you.
Member Boyson.
Chairperson, mine is not a question, but a comment. Chairperson, I'm in a very unique situation in terms of I've experienced being a former district mayor. I've experienced the across the board real life actions regarding what has been contained in this plan. And this is an enhancement of what we've experienced on the ground. The question of what is happening at local level came up. On the area of safety, just as an example, all the districts have safety plans. We've been partnering with the province back then. I'm now fortunate to be sitting in this space where all these things has been happening. There are district safety plans. Some districts have canine units. Some districts have drones. All districts have drones. Some have canine units. We've partnered with province. We've partnered with SEPs, and it's unique for me. You know, so I think the only thing that I will be watching out for is the enhancements of what I've been used to from where I'm coming from. But overall, it's generic in front of us, but it is happening from where I'm coming from. Thank you, Chair.
Member Heron, online.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I want to maybe pick up where your opening comments after the presentation, Chair, around the ability to monitor through this electronic dashboard, for want of a better word, of what each department is actually doing. And my question is really how the strategic imperatives that are in this plan are translated into measurable actions in the linked department strategic plans. I see each chapter has linked departments, and it says linked department strategic plan. So how will these strategic imperatives find themselves in the department strategic plans, and then how will that dashboard that tracks performance, how will we be able to see the link between this plan, the department's implementation strategic plan, and that we're actually measuring in a meaningful way. And then if I can just get into some of the detail about two of the chapters in particular. The chapter on safety and integrated violence prevention. The reading of the plan appears to place a duty on communities to some extent to address the prevention of violence. There's a partnership where the community must be involved, and that makes some sense. But I guess the question, what I think is missing is an acknowledgement of the environmental factors that generate or create an environment conducive for violent crime, and how does the community address those environmental factors, which many of them are historic. And so where does this plan address the historic environmental factors that are part of the crime problem, and the role of government, both the provincial governments and local governments, in addressing those historic legacy drivers, for want of a better word. I guess what I'm asking also is, does the plan look at where violent crime is prevalent, and what are the characteristics of the environments in which that crime is prevalent, and then where do you address how you will redress the characteristics in those neighborhoods? I hope that was clear enough. And then if I go to the improved spatial transformation and social infrastructure part of the plan, I think it's on page 66. There are 4 or 5 bullet points around outcomes that we would like to see over the next 5 years, and I think those outcomes are outcomes that we could all support. But again, where we're going to see those being implemented, I guess it comes back to my first question around the linked department strategic plans. If you're going to say households have increased access to basic services and improved shelter, where will we see that being implemented in a kind of detailed way where it can be measured? Thank you.
Member Stevens, and then we'll give an opportunity for the department and the Premier to respond. Member Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to know, how does the PSP 2025-2030 align with the long-term development goals of the Western Cape and the National Development Plan? And how does it incorporate the lessons learned from the past shortcoming in delivery? And just on implementation and coordination, how will district and municipal governments be supported to align their plans with the PSP? That's for now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, over to the Premier and the department, his department.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the honourable members for the questions. I'll start with 1 or 2 and then hand it over, because obviously these are the policy unit specialists. But perhaps at the beginning to talk to the Honourable Said's questions. And first of all, absolutely, if the presentations, we spoke about it yesterday, is how do we get those presentations timeously? Of course, the presentation is a PowerPoint presentation highlighted out of the strategic document. Of course, the strategic document was first tabled at the PSP on the 24th of August 2024, just over a year ago, where all municipalities, and of course, we invited all political parties to that strategic tabling. Then, of course, the document was then formally completed because it had to be aligned to the national plan as well in our discussions as province with national, and then it was formally tabled on the 4th of March this year. And then, as I said, spoken about in the SOPA and the SOPA discussions. And then perhaps also that obviously this is the policy unit, the provincial strategic plan, the high-level plan, and it's got to be obviously linked, I think in Honourable Stevens' question, to the national plan. But it also then, out of this, and maybe that's Honourable Heron's questions, is that then do you see it then in the strategic plans and the annual performance plans of each department? Because if you go to the page that the Honourable Heron was talking about, adults and older people have access to the basic services and resources needed to manage their health and well-being. And then that's got to be reflected in those strategic plans. And of course, if it's not, we've got to be able to raise those issues. And then also maybe then coming back again full circle to the high-level reporting to see, are we moving in the right direction? And then that again has to be read when for example, it could be a local government issue on the planning or social history and past and how it's been corrected, and that would be read into that department, as well as perhaps the Department of Infrastructure and how they report back. Then I think I've said that again in the Honourable from Minden, the same question is how that then cascades down into the actual strategic plans of each department. And I also hope that, once we've got this ticked off on the reporting system and bringing it up into the electronic system that's making it much more public, then the departments are going to be doing the same as we evolve. And then perhaps, I think I've answered those things from the Honourable Heron. Obviously, as that historic and environmental factors, would have to be read in local government, in infrastructure, in the safety plan. It could be lighting that comes right down to a smaller issue, or it could be in the violence prevention space, which would be read in the safety component of the strategic document, but maybe then starts finding traction in perhaps the violence prevention, which is a chrysalis program, or it could even be like this latest one that they've just launched with stunting in children, in partnership with the DG Murray Trust and our department and ShopRite, in trying to deal with a specific issue like stunting and how that would affect violence prevention into the future. Yeah, I think just high level from that. I can always come back to you more. DG, I don't know if you or the team want to add to that.
Thank you very much. I will try and respond from maybe starting with Member Stevens' question. I can confirm that our plan is in full alignment with the National Medium-Term Development Plan. In fact, the Medium-Term Development Plan focuses on 3 areas. It's the area of growing the economy, which is the #1 priority. Ours is in full alignment. And in fact, what we've even done, we've even taken some of the key initiatives that came from the President's speech, the SONA, that's actually linked to the Medium-Term Development Plan, and pulled it into some of our own key initiatives. So particularly those initiatives that the President have mentioned. There's full alignment. And then what National also does is obviously they've broken theirs down into different departmental responses. Like you have your social sector, the focus on education, health, and social development. We have the same focus. We just call it differently: educated, healthy, and caring society. And then there's a whole issue around the third matter in the National Development Plan, deals with building the capability of the state. Because if you're not going to address the capability of the state, you're not going to be able to deal with all the issues. Our capability of the state sits in the innovation, governance, and culture part. And we believe that everything that we do is around our culture, our values, and we've got a strong emphasis on building the capability of the state, particularly through the work that we're doing, at Cromeria. So from an alignment perspective, I mean, we can convincingly say that our plan is aligned to the National Development Plan, and there are also processes in place with the DPME, because we need to report also to the DPME, not only our quarterly targets, but we also report on the alignment and the progress, around implementing the National Development Plan. And that takes place, when all the Director Generals meet through the group called FASOS. Then on the second issue around alignment, how do we align the PSP with what local government is doing, particularly in the IDPs? I can also confirm that process we do. Premier has his meetings with local government. That happens generally on a quarterly basis. Then Minister Bradell, as the Minister for Local Government, also have his Min-May meetings. And if you look at those agenda, everything is around delivery. So we give them updates on where we are with implementing the PSP. And the key thing that I want to put on the table is that we've been very careful when we crafted the PSP as not as a Western Cape government plan. but the PSP speaks to the Western Cape plan, and it pulls in those things that municipalities need to do. And obviously, where national government connects to some of our initiatives, we've also pulled that in. So if you look at the PSP document, it talks about the entire province and what it is that we want to achieve. And then you need to zoom into each of the different IDPs of the municipalities to see how do they actually connect to the broader picture. And as Premier said, this is a process that we started in May already last year, 2024. And as municipalities developed the IDPs, they actually used the PSP as a guiding frame to develop their own IDPs. And obviously with other documentation like our medium-term budget policy statement, like our provincial economic review and outlook, like our municipal economic review and outlook, all these documents come together to talk about what it is that we want to do in the province. Member Heron covered the issue primarily around implementation. I think that was also some of the issues that Member Syed raised. So I'll try and deal with that specifically. So if the members go to the plan and you look at chapter 6 of our PSP, there's a whole chapter that deals with implementing the PSP. And what is key from it is that we're saying that the provincial strategic plans, it only serves as a guiding framework for departmental, strategic and annual performance plans. So if you want to go look at particular initiatives, at particular issues that that's going to be driven, those things you will find it in the departmental strategic plans and also in the annual performance plan. And Member Syed is correct. The 5-year strategic plans and the annual performance plan are legislative documents that needs to be done, and it runs together with your budget, and that gets tabled in the legislature. There's no legal provision to actually do a PSP, but you cannot actually do planning in departments if you don't have a guiding document, a guiding framework in terms of where it is that you want to go as an institution. So the PSP is like, it sets your ultimate objectives, and now each and every department, and therefore if you go into the individual objectives that we want to achieve in terms of the 4, you will always see that there is a linked department, and the strategic plans needs to be linked to a particular portfolio. So the PSP wouldn't necessarily zoom into every department, but it pulls the different initiatives together. So I'm going to use one example. So if we talk about training of people, when you go to the Department of Education, you will then see in their programs like Program 2, how many learners are they going to put through the system? What are their plans in terms of throughput rate? What is the focus area, mathematics and science, etc.? But when you come to the PSP, you will see as an example that those initiatives of education actually sits within the growth for jobs space, because we're saying we're not just educating people to basically progress from grade 1 to grade 12, but there is a bigger purpose that we want to achieve. And we want to educate people so that they are able to take up jobs. So if you look at the PSP, you will see the bigger plan of what it is that we want to do. And then all these different pieces come together in departmental APPs and SPs. And as they say, that all those different parts, you must just make sure that the whole, which is the PSP, is greater than the sum of each of these different parts. And what we do from the center between ourselves and PT, we report to Cabinet on a quarterly basis. We zoom into what different departments need to do. We use the performance tracker that tracks the budget spent plus the performance on the QPR. And when all of those things come together, it will actually feed into a document that we call the PSP implementation plan. Part of the PSP implementation plan are also implementation plans and dashboards. So like for G4J, there is a dashboard that is running. 7 departments that work towards it. It's 7 key areas that G4J sits. We've got an HOD committee that meets. We report to Cabinet quite regularly. And there's actually a dashboard that everybody completes. So if we look at all the initiatives, as an example in G4J, we can indicate to you whether we're making progress, whether we're not making progress, and what is it that we need to do to actually shift it. And it comes back to those initiatives that we've addressed within Chapter 6 of the PSP, where we ask the question, so how are we going to implement it? What are the risks? What are the data and evidence? How are we going to coordinate it around the governance frameworks and accountability? And then all these things come together, because at the end of the 5 years, we will be measured. What we've also done in addition to that, Chair, and I spoke about it previously, we're not going to give you a measurement of how we're doing in relation to our provincial strategic plan after 5 years when the current government is gone. We will report on an annual basis, And in fact, I think the document has been issued. It's our first year record of delivery. I must just check if it's on our website, but it's on our website. It's already been printed. So the members are actually welcome. If you ask, so what have you done in the first year in relation to your PSP? There's a document. It's part of public accountability. We report to the public. What is it that we have done? And you will see in our record of delivery, it also looks forward. So we also make a promise statement in the document to say, the next year, we're going to do X, Y, Z, but ultimately it comes back to our bigger objective. So we believe in transparency, we believe in accountability, because that's where we are, but everything comes back to delivering on the 5-year plan that this government has put in place, because ultimately, that report goes to the residents. So I think I have responded to the issue around implementation. On the issue in safety, and I can ask Sarah maybe to add, I definitely agree with Member Heron, particularly around safety, violence prevention, that a lot of the stuff is to do with environmental factors. So when one zoom into the safety plan, and those questions can also be asked to the specific departments. I mean, some of those initiatives talks about improving, living spaces where people operate every day. We look at street lighting. We look at what are those environmental things that makes it easier for people to commit crimes, and what are those things that we need to institute that actually makes it easier for, let's call it law enforcement to move in, but also for communities to deal with the things that happens in their space. And you will also see, Chair, that the plan places a lot of responsibilities on communities, because it's not just government's role to change the environment. We need to work together with communities, NGOs, and everyone, in the different spaces to make a real difference. But I mean, if Sarah wants to add, she can definitely do that. I also want to say, Member Boyson, thank you for the comment. I think I have responded to Member van Minnen's question in relation to how it will be achieved. And then I think the third question from a member side was around, what are the practical approaches to deal with the challenges at local government level? I think I've responded to that, our own process. And Chair, you have the Premier's Coordinating Forum where Premier meets with all the mayors, and also the MMs are there. But at my level as a DG, I also have meetings with all the municipal managers in the province. Graham, I have meetings with all the municipal managers in the province on local government matters. When I meet with them, also on a quarterly basis, I talk about the things holistically. And what is it that we need to do holistically to change? And it doesn't actually matter who manages the municipality, what political party is in. It doesn't matter. It is about the residents, and it is about the bigger plan that we've all agreed upon. So all those things are in place. And then I think I have responded to the issue around the PFMA and how all of this fit into the 5-year plans that's already been tabled by that side. And then lastly, Chair, I think your comment, I think, is welcome. We believe in the concept of good governance, and good governance is not compliance. I mean, in this government, we look at it differently. It's the way you do your business. That's it. And we believe in the principles of transformative governance, because that takes you to the next level of good governance. And what we're putting on the table, particularly around accountability and transparency, is a matter that falls in the transformative governance space, as you put it. So hopefully, Chair, when you see those tools, and as we develop it, it's building blocks, and we would really like your input also into it to refine it and to make it usable, for not just the public, but also for members of Parliament. I think that takes care. I don't know, Sarah, you want to say something around the safety issues?
Thanks, DG. Yes, just 2 comments from my side. Firstly, from Member Heron, I couldn't agree more. I think the safety plan, which needs to be read alongside the PSP, acknowledges firstly the environmental factors such as unemployment, all the issues around redress, around inequality, poverty, and so on, actually being root causes of some of the challenges facing our communities. So especially around historic environmental factors as well. So I think just to say that the safety plan is currently in draft form. It has been revised. I think that is public knowledge, on the basis that we obviously wanted to align the last safety plan to the current PSP, as well as ensure that we have a stronger focus on violence prevention as a lever that we are working on. And so just to put that out there, I think it will be approved in the coming short months ahead of us. And then on the point raised by Member Van Minnen on making the plan alive to achieve its aims. I think I just want to talk about Planet Youth. At the moment, we're running, or the Department of Health is running, the Violence Prevention Unit in the Department of Health is running a really exciting project called Planet Youth, which is an initiative aimed at 123 schools where we have surveyed 50,000 youth across kind of high crime areas in the province. The survey results will then assist us and inform our interventions that we're putting on the table. The results are coming through slowly, but we have yet to see the consolidated insights. Based on that, we're hoping that that will be a way for us to take those insights, take data, to make better budget and policy decisions going forward. Thanks.
Going to open for another round of questions or comments. Okay, I see Member Sayed and I see Member Heron. Member Sayed.
No, Chair, thank you very much. And let me thank the department for the responses. What I'm gathering here is that we have what is a framework. I'm getting more of a framework than a plan. Not unless I'm getting into the semantics too much, but I'm getting a sense more of a framework, a strategic framework, as opposed to an actual plan, a strategic plan. And I'm not sure whether this is also whether the department is open and sees this plan also as a work in progress and not cast in stone. Probably give it more of a flavor. I want to give you to say, because I mean, my sense, I'm just looking at the national government space, DPME, and I'm not sure whether we've maybe looked at the DPME formats, because DPME formats, it provides for formats for strategic plans and for APPs. So I just wanted to know to what extent is then a practical alignment with those particular formats. Then at a more practical level, I heard reference being made, and it maybe ties a bit with Member Heron's question around living conditions and shelter, because I mean, living conditions, not only in this province, but across the country, it's not where we should be. But when there were these focus group sessions, I wanted to just, if we could just have some details, who were the residents that were consulted? Where are these residents from? Who do they represent? Can we get a sense of that? What's the sampling like? Thank you.
Member Heron.
Thanks, Chair. There's just 2 points. First of all, the DG was talking about a chapter 6 in the actual PSP, but the chapters aren't actually numbered. So I would like to just alert him, if this document's going out and he's going to refer to chapter 6, there is no chapter 6 numbered. But in any event, I did find what he was talking about. And I guess the question is, what is the status of this PSP? And so, in other words, if it's already been approved or adopted by Cabinet, does it need to be? And so when will we see it in the departmental APPs? Is it in the 2025-26 financial year, or do we wait for the next financial year? Thank you.
I do not see any other hands, so please proceed.
Chair, just on the question of response to Member Heron, chapter 6 starts on page 81. I don't know, maybe it's on the e-version also, but it's on page 81. If not, we can provide a hard copy to the Secretariat in Parliament, maybe to just give him an update or the document. Then, yeah, it's on page 81. Then this PSP has already been adopted. In fact, it provided the frame for the 2025-2026 budget APPs and SP, and in fact, it was tabled by the Premier when he tabled the State of the Province address in Beaufort West on the 26th of February 2025. So what we have in this PSP is actually already in the different APPs. Then in terms of the member sides question, in terms of the DPME formats, I can confirm that our APPs and our SPs are all aligned to the DPME formats. So there's full compliance, and I mean, Zenit and the team generally test that every year in the same way that our formats are aligned to the guidelines given by National Treasury in relation to the budget. So we make sure that all of these come together. Then, in relation to the comment on whether it's a framework and not a plan, I mean, it actually provides it's a guiding plan for the province to actually pull all these things together, and therefore we talk about it. So if you look at page 82, we talk about it's a guiding framework for departmental, strategic, and annual performance plans. Because imagine if we had a PSP that is a combination of every plan of a department. Generally, a APP is about 200 pages. So it sit with a thick book of not less than 2,500 pages if you just pull everything together. So what the document does, it tells you what's the ultimate goal you want to get to in 5 years. These are the things that you need to put together, and your detailed steps and the detailed outputs and outcomes that you want to achieve. Firstly, it must be aligned to your ultimate goal, but that you reflect in your own APP and an SP. And remember, the SP is also a 5-year document. So if the members want to see everything we do in government, we basically need to put all those things together, and then you'll have a good sense of what everyone is doing. And I mean, this guiding framework is really that. It tells you whatever you do, you must always go back to the center in terms of all your objectives. Then in relation to whether it's cost and stone, we use the annual sort of record of delivery, Chair. If there are any changes, almost like what we do during the adjustments budget, if there are any changes to the APPs, we come back to Parliament and we raise it every year in November, but that's on an annual basis. If there are any changes in this plan, the 5-year plan, because things change, you know, we'd use the process through our record of delivery and actually talk about those changes to the main plan so that the plan remains fresh, but it is a 5-year plan. And obviously, if you set a 5-year goal, you don't want to change every year sort of where you want to go. So the main plan remain intact, but we just tweak it, you know, as and when our conditions changes. And obviously what we do, Chair, we always do an environmental scan, an environmental assessment of what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the financial perspective, and then we fine tune what we will do on an annual basis and take it back into the APP process. Then on the focus groups, I don't know, Tristan, can you maybe respond to that? I haven't been involved in that detail, but I mean, if you don't know, then we can pull the information and then we can actually supply it to the committee in writing. Tristan, do you want to respond to that?
I think that's perhaps better. We can give you better detail if we just go and rather provide a written response. But yeah, we've got it there. We've got it in the document that's got that detail. Yeah.
You maybe want to say something around just the process.
Just the process, yeah. So the idea really behind the focus group discussions was to have conversations within the portfolio areas, but really be guided by the focus groups on what the key issues were emerging for them within that. So there was a set of focus group discussions focused on what has now become the Educated, Healthy and Caring Society, which had frontline helpers from NGOs, government service providers and individuals across different income brackets who came together, had a conversation about what the key issues related in their lives related to this topic. In safety, there was the inclusion of neighborhood watch members, household representatives from each of the income brackets, again, to give us a strong sense of it. And then with jobs, there was a particular focus on engaging young people in a conversation And there were a few creative approaches that we used to engage young people. So it wasn't just a focus group. There was a World Cafe, and then there was also a WhatsApp platform that was built to allow them to interact. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. That's all responses.
Perhaps just on that point, I think just to avoid any confusion, it sounds like you did focus group research. It's not public consultation. That's a different process, different method. You did research, focus group research. Okay, just wanted to be clear there. Colleagues, any other questions? All right, I want to see there, I got your hand. I just want to check there, a bit of an eyesight problem. So I want to be absolutely sure of everyone online. Member Sayed.
No, thank you very much. I think it's now quite clear that it's more of a, I mean, it's reinforced as a strategic framework. I just wanted to get in, as I promised and asked earlier, that I'll just one or two of the specific aspects. I just wanted to know, number one, and I know the Department of the Premier is quite big in terms of Wi-Fi rollout. Very, very important, because without access to internet, many of the issues we're talking about, whether it's safety, especially safety, our young people are not going to have access to opportunities. So I just wanted to get a sense, number one, where are we at in terms of the practical implementation of what the framework or the plan speaks to? And where does Wi-Fi rollout fit in to the values and the approach of the plan? Because I mean, we've been to areas, I've just come back from Vrygrond, that's why I was late, where communities raised the fact that the former premier promised Wi-Fi there in Vrygrond, but it's only available at another center that's run by a foreign NGO, for example. So I just wanted to get a sense of that. In terms of job creation, and I see there is a reference to it. Could we get a sense as to when will the growth for job strategy 5-year implementation plan with the targets be made available? Can we get a sense as to when we'll be having that, so that we can also interrogate that and just get a sense of that? Then education. I know I'm also passionate about education, and the medium-term development plan identifies reducing dropout rates, expanding, for example, childhood development, early childhood development, and addressing inequalities in poor and rural schools as major national priorities. I just wanted to get a sense as to why my reading is, and maybe there's a reason, why does it seem as if the PSP places somewhat of a disproportionate emphasis on the digitalization and global competitiveness, as opposed to this focus on the under-resourced schools? Just wanted to get a sense, not unless there is a link and there's a synergy in that regard. Then also with regards to safety, and I think I'm going to getting close to wrapping up here when it comes to safety. I'm not going to have a lot. How does the provincial government, the approach around LEAP officers and boots on the ground, in terms of the safety plan that you have, how does it align to the medium-term to the medium-term development plan when it comes to actually addressing crime and safety, as opposed to it just being a boots-on-the-ground approach? Just wanted to get a sense of that, and then finally, maybe maybe this is not the platform, but Do we have an update as to when the Children's Commissioner is going to start? Because that also speaks broadly to the plan. Thank you.
Remember, Sayed, that
Or to
is
the
what
framework. Thank
that's what one calls taking a political gap. But having said that, I think there is in fact feedback there. So,
1 o'clock tomorrow, the Children's Commissioner will join me for a cup of coffee so I can hand over the documentation. And I think obviously the process is still on the go, but you know, signing all the papers.
But yeah, that was
Don't shake your head. It's fine.
that was a bit of political opportunism, but I'd say that with tongue in cheek. There's good news there. But perhaps if I can add, and again, I'm going to be a little bit tongue in cheek. I know this is a strategic framework because it says the provincial strategic plan, you know, so by its very nature, it's in a sense, we're talking about, you have your corporate level strategy, you have your business unit strategy, you have your functional strategy there. So this is a bit of a high level conversation, but I think it's very natural for anyone following the proceedings or frankly for members of the House to also in a framework see where the questions and the feedback will be. So my question would be, if you are unable in a high-level discussion such as the one that we are having, if you're unable to pinpoint where exact answers can be given, for example, in housing or crime or whatever the case would be, how would this feed into the feedback mechanisms, especially the dashboard that you're developing that you refer to? How would that feed into the political oversight mechanism? So in future, we can see the not just in terms of your public-facing component, but also in our committee work. How would that dovetail going forward in the strategic plan? And I just want to double check. Okay, so yeah, so we can also treat this as the wrap up on your side. Thank you very much.
First, I want to just talk about the difference between a plan and a framework. I would not call it a framework. I'll call it a roadmap. That's what I think it is. It guides you on how to do your stuff, where to stop, where to yield, and what to include, on which route you should drive. So I'd rather call it a roadmap. And in fact, our PSP document is it's fully aligned to even the way that the medium-term development plan at national has been put together. So even the medium-term development plan is also a roadmap. It's a guiding tool for all the national departments, you know, to pull this stuff together. So there's full alignment in the approach, but I love it to call it a roadmap, you know, for all the government departments to stick to. And what I always say to my IT team chair is that as the center of government, we provide the road, but we also decide who drives on that road. The same with the PSP. It's a roadmap for departments to follow. On the job creation comments from member side in terms of the G4J implementation plan, we can actually ask that team to come to this committee anytime to come and present it. In fact, that's the team that is very, very active. They've already got the dashboard. They've got everything in place. So if there's a particular request from this committee for that team to come and present the G4J implementation plan, we would welcome that. Then on the education question in relation to obviously the focus area of education around the dropouts and dealing with inequality and stuff, we are definitely not de-emphasizing digitalization and global competitiveness. In fact, that is centered in the work that we do under G4J. It's PFA, we call it, it's the key area under PFA 6, and you will see how that comes through. And then there's also a particular PFA where we talk about digital transformation and how it helps the economy. And in fact, member side, if you look at all our connectivity, because there was also a question around Wi-Fi connectivity and rollout of the 1,900 sites that we've got, more than 1,500 of that is actually in the education space. And I mean, I know the committee is going to come and visit Kromeria, but we would also like to invite you to come and look at our data center on the 4th floor in the tower block in terms of how we monitor this 1,900 Wi-Fi connectivity sites. It's both government buildings and non-government buildings, and also obviously all our e-centers, where all these things actually land. And in fact, over the next 3 years, we're actually planning to expand it by about 10% to reach about 2,150 sites. And a lot of those will sit in the e-center space. My last recollection, I think there is a e-center in Vrygrond. If not, I can actually check it. Oh, you'll answer that. Okay. And then, Premier, while you're going to answer that, maybe just touch on also the boots on the ground and all that stuff around safety.
You want to go first? Or
No, I think it's done.
Done for me. Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. I think, first of all, if you just Google Western Cape free Wi-Fi hotspots, you will get an active map. If you zoom in on that map, you'll get the blue dots of where all the Wi-Fi hotspots are. If you go to Vrygrond, and unfortunately, there's actually only one at the moment in Vrygrond. Hopefully, we can roll out a few more. But that free Wi-Fi hotspot is actually based at Capricorn Primary School. But I mean, that's the best way to do it, is you can go on and you can see where they are. Obviously, with regards to, I'm just going to get the question again. It was the boots on the ground. Obviously, if you go into the frame, you'll then go into the PSP. But with regard to boots on the ground, you must remember that the boots on the ground component is not driven by the National Development Plan. It is actually only driven in the provincial plan as an added force multiplier on the one side, but also as a project to say, let's have a look if we try something different. So, I mean, the real aspect is, we in 2019, when we developed the safety plan, there were 20,000 police officers deployed to the Western Cape. There are now only 13,000 police officers deployed to the Western Cape. The population has grown and crime has gone up. So even if you put the 1,200 LEAP officers in addition, I mean, we're now at 14,200 officers. We're way down on where we should be. But of course, then that has to be within that department judged, have a look at the data, see what the result is. And, obviously that must be updated all the time. You'll also see now in the provincial, so this is the strategic plan. You'll see the provincial economic review and outlook, which will be coming on the 30th of this month, which again will actually bring some of this data together and look at it from an economic point of view. But you'll also see, crime data in there, spatial development data, jobs data. You'll see all of that data coming into that report as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Member Sayed, last
Yes.
set of comments from you.
My last bite, Chair. No, thank you to the Premier. This is a follow-up. Thank you for the responses. I just wanted to perhaps maybe just clarify maybe the way I put it across. We are saying the boots on the ground emphasis is one that the province places, and rightfully so, that's fine. But I wanted to get a sense, how does we call it the roadmap now, how does the roadmap speak to that balance of boots? But I think the Premier responded to that to an extent, some of the other inputs. But that is just as a food for thought. The balance between the safety plans, emphasis on boots on the ground, and the other aspects around safety, which we find in the national framework. That was it. Then just finally, in terms of again, it's a follow-up on the issue of the focus group. We could maybe get a breakdown, maybe not now, but when they do give us the written information around, we could be broken down in terms of each possibly district in the province. How many focus groups? What was the quantity? Which areas? That type of drilling down, so that it just assists us. That's basically it from my side. Thanks.
Any responses from your side?
Thank you to the committee. I mean, we're always open to, brief you. And as I said, our data center stuff is there. We will respond once we get your letter on the exact issues that you require, particularly on the focus stuff. And I mean, we focus on implementing, our plan because I mean, we only have for another 3.5 years.
Can I just say this is not a public hearing? This is a committee meeting. So, no, okay, I'm actually going to make a ruling on that. Members of the public have a right to participate in public hearings through a chairperson. This is not a public hearing. This is a committee meeting, and no one approached me beforehand to participate. So I'm making a ruling. We're busy concluding the session. Over to you, Premier.
Thank you very much, Chair. Perhaps also just to the Honourable Said, I mean, absolutely, we must get you all of that detail. I think, as we've said, whatever we can, we will supply with all of that detail. And maybe also to the other part. So if you go into the plan itself, and of course, that's how it feeds in, or the framework, or the PSP, or whatever you want to call it, but that's how it feeds into the actual plans of the departments. And so there'll be a high level, which will say rural and urban area communities and infrastructure are protected through locally owned safety initiatives enabled by area-based and collaborative whole of society approaches. And then each department that's got responsibility. So then, of course, you can then go into each department and say, okay, so what are you doing about these specific things? And how do we read that in the plan? And then maybe, Chair, so just to say thank you, and I must say thanks to the policy team. We're really trying to do differently and more. So as the DG has just said, this dashboard is one. The second thing is the yearly reporting now that we'll do, the record of delivery every year. We used to do one middle of the term and end of the term. Now you'll get one every single year. But also we would welcome input from the committee to say, are we able to drill down into something else, or what about what's missing maybe, etc. So we would also definitely welcome. We want to try and improve on this every single time.
Just from my side, thank you very much. There's definitely food for thought here. And as the new incoming committee chair, I think it's a very exciting space, because also from a oversight point of view, I can see there's going to be creative thinking on our sides also as to how we keep up with the systemic changes. And of course, I'm pretty sure there's going to be, because we're in new territory in many respects, there's going to we're going to have to constantly assess what works and doesn't work, and that makes it an exciting process. So let's put it this way. I think in our committee, we're going to debate, we're going to disagree, but one thing we're not going to have is a boring process with a boring department. I think there's exciting things happening, and I look forward to that.
I mean, maybe a little bit of thing. So next week on Friday, we will be having our Service Excellence Awards for the entire government. This committee sits in the center. So we have extended invitations to this committee to attend it. I mean, it's the Premier hosted, but it's for the entire government so that you can see what is going on, what are those areas of excellence, and also where we celebrate people, but we also acknowledge what people have brought to the table. And I mean, from our side as the AO for the Department of the Premier, it would be an honor if this committee could attend it. We've also extended invitation, to each of the other committee chairs, because obviously it's a reflection on the entire government, and we would really welcome it for you to be there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Member Syed.
Thank you very much. Let me thank, I know I remember last term I was supposed to attend. Member Dugmore couldn't make it, and something happened on the last minute that I couldn't, so I look forward to that. Chair, just a quick one, man. I don't want to, and I don't want a fight, and I think perhaps, and it's good that you've made it clear that, look, this is not a public hearing, certainly. But given maybe that we've perhaps, if it's done in an orderly manner, and perhaps if one can engage, there are members of the public here. Maybe just for the committee to get a sense as to who's here, people can introduce themselves, and if there is time, if they are willing, if the department is willing, maybe to take a few questions. If not, maybe they can then be engaged after the meeting if the department has some time. Thank you, because I don't exactly know what are the issues that the members of the public have on hand. Thank you.
A member said, I did make a ruling, and the ruling is that, I'll tell you why I make the ruling, because if we have a situation where we don't follow the rules of the institution, then we actually end up creating a mockery of the processes here. But you did make a suggestion. What I would suggest is, and I would certainly also like to, as the chair, like to engage and get to know the various members of the community. I see some interesting traditional ways, which, and as a historian, I am fascinated to hear more about that. And if there's time available from the department afterwards to engage, it would be welcome. But can I say, going forward, member said, if you are aware of members of the public who want to engage with the committee, you will find that I'm a very open-minded chairperson, provided it's the process is followed and I'm engaged with before a meeting, because that's how the rules work. So we can engage, but I would suggest then after the committee week, you're more than welcome to engage with us after the meeting. But with those words, no, I've made a ruling, Member Boyson, so I don't think we need to debate it. There's, with those words, if I can thank the Premier and the department, we will be dealing with our resolutions, the resolutions or recommendations from our side. You don't need to be there. But it would be great if you hang around for further creative interactions with us and the public. Thank you very much. And then the rest of the committee, obviously, we remain. Please do not go out and have creative discussions before we've completed our committee work. Colleagues, so let's look at recommendations and resolutions from the presentation and the briefing there. If I can get inputs from the committee. Member Sayed?
Chair, I'm not sure, maybe it was taken down by Wasima when I suggested that we just get that the details of the focus groups, that focus group information.
There was also a suggestion about specific breakdown in terms of the job growth, and I think there was a spatial component to it as well. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but I suggest that that's something that we include as a resolution as well, to include in our oversight. And there was a proposal for a visit to a data center that we can see, for an oversight visit, that we can see how all this fits together. Any other resolutions or recommendations? I see member here. Sorry, member here, my eyesight, well, there's a glare, so I struggle to see that, but I see your hand.
Yeah, Chair, I don't know. I'm assuming this is possible. The PSP was approved, adopted, and is now implemented through the APPs, and the performance is measured on a dashboard. Instead of us having to go to each department and ask where in the APPs this plan fits or sits, can we not get a report from the Department of the Premier as to what each department is doing to implement this PSP and what they're measuring on that dashboard?
Okay. So there's a further resolution, which I also think, Member Heron, could be part of how we approach as a committee also a future oversight. You know, when it's a useful layer to look at things like annual reports, well, essentially the oversight program of the committee. So the suggestion is we get that, and I think we can then also discuss it with a view to how we conduct our oversight. So it's a useful framework. Although, colleagues, I must say that from the previous year, I've also learned that one mustn't get over-ambitious with oversight, because you tend to then run into problems with programming. There's simply not enough time for following up all the things that we're passionate about. So I think we should also discuss all these ideas when we finalize the draft oversight program. Colleagues, are we agreed? Member Sayed?
I don't know if I'm now being technical on wording. Maybe we must ask them to rename the document, but that's just on a lighter note. Thank you.
It's
only the roadmap. We are used to roadmaps.
It is an interesting discussion, because in the beginning of any strategic process, the biggest challenge is to get people to understand the same thing with the same words, because people have often used different terminology meaning the exact same thing. I think what we can do is let's stick to the official wording, but I won't have a problem as the chair if we talk about the strategic plan / roadmap / that thing that I meant at the time, you know. So, but it is a terminology thing that we need to all get used to. I don't see hands there. Then, colleagues, the next item on the agenda is just the adoption of the minutes. The first set of minutes is when you actually elected me, perhaps to your detriment, but that's the first. If I can ask for a proposer, that was of the, get the date there, and what was the 19th? The 19th. Right, proposer. I see member Van Minnen, a seconder. I see member Boyson. Yeah, no, it's I'm ignoring you. No, I'm joking. You'll have another shot now. There's the other set of minutes. The next set of minutes was our last meeting. Let's get the date correct. 22 August. If I can have a proposer. Member Van Minnen, and a member said it's now your chance to second. So a member said has seconded. Right, and let me just check with the procedural officer if there's anything else that we need to deal with today. Colleagues, that brings us to the end of the meeting. And as was requested, let's the individuals that are here from the public that made the effort to come and listen to a committee proceeding, we would love to engage with you as well. I think there might be coffee down the corridor as well. Thank you very much.